everyone, my name is Sam. Thanks for checking out this video. If you get to the end and liked it, then subscribe, bell notification, give the video a thumbs up. My eye has been like water, I don't know, I think I'm just super tired all day. So I had to film this, but I didn't, there was no point in doing my makeup because it's gonna get like white, like fall off my face because of the water from my eye, so I just figured we're gonna go with this look today. So, wrapping up November. Yeah, it's taken me forever to do this video, but November wrap up. I read a good amount of books. I don't know that there was any that super surprised me a bunch this month, but we'll kind of do a speedish round review of the books and favorite to most favorite, and then I actually pulled a favorite quote this month. There's a lot, I feel like there's been a lot of books this month that or this year that I've read, and I'm like, yeah, but nothing really stood out. But I read a book this month that I literally heard it and I like paused the audiobook that I was listening along with and was like, I have to write that down. So let's talk about November. Starting off, I read Hollowpox, The Hunt for Morgan Crow by Jessica Townsend, book 3 in the Nevermore series. This is a solid 5 stars, and it was just fantastic. Essentially pandemic breaks out in the world and she has to make decisions about her alliance, or yeah, kind of what sort of alliance, if any, she wants to make with Ezra Squall in this in order to save her home now. Better than book 2 somehow, which I think was somehow better than book 1, but then I'm also like, Nevermore is like the best book, you know what I mean? But yeah, this was wonderful. Then I read Set Fire to the Gods by Sarah Rash and Kristen Simmons. This is, I think, a duology. Or it could be totally wrong and be a trilogy. Is duology or trilogy? This was book 1 of that series. I think of the books that I've read by Sarah Rash, because she's an author that I do follow. Snow Like Ashes is still my favorite from her, and then there's These Rebel Waves, which I enjoyed. I think it just was mismarketed. I think this was just okay. There's nothing necessarily wrong with it. It just fits into a traditional YA formula, and I wasn't particularly attached to any of the characters. I normally like the setting of like gladiators and that sort of stuff, but I don't know, this book just didn't really pique my interest the way that I was hoping to. I'm glad I got it through the library, and I do think I will read the sequel, probably just because I like Sarah Rash so much. So I think this is a book that if you're adoring YA fantasies right now, this is one that you should probably consider reading. If you're someone who's like me, who's kind of getting tired of YA fantasies because it kind of just regurgitate a lot of the same plots and everything, then this is probably one that you wouldn't do anything wrong by skipping it. So in the end, this is a 3.5 out of 5 stars. Then I read Plain Bad Heroines by Emily M. Danforth. This is the first book by this author that I've read, but the author has a couple other books out. It was The Miseducation, sorry, of Cameron Post is her big work. It wasn't as dark as I was expecting going in with a cover like this, but it was really interesting, and you have a split between kind of modern day Hollywood and this kind of boarding school with a dark history. But I definitely want to read this. I read this obviously in November when I thought it was going to be a bit more dark. I want to read this in the summer. I think I would be really curious to see how I respond to it then. It's by no means bad, but I'm very impacted by like my surroundings, and I'm a very mood-based reader, so I think it'd be interesting to read it with that perspective. It wasn't exactly what I was expecting, but for the most part I enjoyed it. It is a bigger book, so I found it dragged a little bit in some parts, but for the most part I enjoyed it. So in the end it was a 4 out of 5 stars. I also read Master of Poisons. This is a wonderful surprise me read. I've heard no one talking about it actually, which is quite sad. I think it was a wonderful adult fantasy, and I think it was exactly everything that I was expecting going into it. It was a really interesting read. As like I said, I feel a little burnt out from YA fantasies, but not necessarily fantasies. It's very specific to YA fantasies, so I feel like adult and middle grade fantasies have been offering a little bit more variety in the stories and everything, so this is just kind of a perfect example of Set Fire to the Gods didn't really do anything for me, unfortunately, but Master of Poisons did, and I got it through the library, but I am hoping to buy my own copy of it. It was a fun read. It was definitely a fun read, and I would highly recommend it. So in the end, it was a 4 out of 5 stars. I picked up Maya and the Rising Dark by Raina Barron. This is her middle grade debut, I believe. It's the author of Kingdom of So do I have the Kingdom of Souls right here? I love Kingdom of Souls. This was quite different though. I love this premise. It reminded me of a couple, just really, especially the beginning concept. It reminded me of like just several middle grade contemporary settings with fantasies. And not in the way that like the plots are like interchangeable or anything like that, but I feel like it's just this thing that's happening in middle grade fantasies that we have it set like in New York or whatever, or Chicago or Toronto, whatever, and then all of a sudden there's this portal to fantasy world, and it felt very like familiar in a way. I was like, oh, I'm excited because this is how it always starts with all the books. This is how all the adventuring starts. I'm very excited to see where books 2 and 3 are going to go. I will definitely be buying them, probably pre-ordering them, honestly. Just absolutely loved this, and I can't wait to see what else the author comes up with. I know Kingdom of Souls, Reaper of Souls? Reaper of something, which is the sequel to Kingdom of Souls, comes out in 2021, so I'm assuming 2022 will bring this sequel, and I cannot wait for it. Solid 5 stars. I feel like it's just the only thing you need to know about this book going into it is like the color starts draining from the world, and she's kind of chasing after her father, who lives a bit of a different life than she was led to believe. I also read Alatsaway, which, since I've read this, has gotten named on like every best books of the year list, from like Kikis to I think it was Times. Like a bunch of different organizations released their list, which is fantastic. From an Indigenous author, I think Alatsaway, which I think I was saying Alatso, it's Alatsaway, I found out from the audiobook. Rebecca Roanhorse, and who else was it? There was another Indigenous author that I saw a few times on Best Books of the Year list, which is great. There's only like I said, like 2 or 3 of them, but slowly but surely getting more representation. And I feel like the more of those books that get named on Best Books lists, the more publishers are going to be willing to take a chance on Indigenous authors. This was a very interesting read, and not exactly what I was expecting. I think the beginning dragged a bit for me, that I wasn't, like, I kind of was like, okay, are we gonna start doing something? Like, this is getting kind of annoying. But once it got going, I enjoyed it. I'm very curious. I got this one from the library. I have it on my list, my Christmas wish list. Just everything about it screamed like summer westerny vibes to me, and I was like, probably shouldn't be reading it this in November. So I did read it, I enjoyed it, but if I do get a physical copy, hopefully for Christmas, I want to do a reread in summer. So again, it was a 4 out of 5 stars, definitely enjoyed. Ava Evergreen and the Semi-Magical Witch was so damn cute. I loved it so much. It screams Kiki delivery service, and another book. And it's been like a month since I've read this book, and I've been trying to figure out what the other book is, and I can't figure it out. I've stared at my bookcases, I've gone through my read list on Goodreads, and I can't find what the other book is that's sitting in the back of my brain, like being like, it's me, it's me. I am so excited. I want my own physical copy of this so badly. It is so sweet and so adorable. If you like middle grade fantasies, I think this is just a general one that you would enjoy. If you like Studio Ghibli films, this would be one that I would suggest maybe taking a look at. And it does, in the kind of summary, say like for fans of Kiki's Delivery Service, that comes through very strongly. The main character's trying to prove her quality, I guess, in a community that values magic, when she is not the most powerful magical being, when her mother has this huge lineage thing that she has to live up to, and she goes a-traveling, and it's just wonderful and so sweet. I loved it so much, and solid 5 out of 5 stars. I want my own physical copy of this so much, and I cannot wait for the sequel. I also read Spoiler Alert this month with the TBR and Beyond group as one of the group reads. This was enjoyable, definitely. I liked the kind of, I don't want to say conflict, because not all of it's part of the conflict, but kind of the structure and the fan fiction world elements. I don't think like it was tweenified. You know, that's what I was kind of concerned about, because I think there's just this kind of like vision to the outside world that like everyone who writes fan fiction is just like a 12-year-old and then that's it, and you're like, no, there's a whole lot to fan fiction and writing. And I thought this was really interesting, that what the stuff it took on. I think I did Okay, I liked that the main character is plus size. I like that we have that representation. The sex scenes were all really good. I found it kind of quite annoying though that they reminded you every single fucking scene that she is plus size. I know that. We all know that. We've established that for the previous 200 pages. You don't need to keep reminding me every single fucking page, okay? Like, that needed to be edited out. It felt like that was a giant oversight on part of the editor. So that got quite annoying. And at some point I felt like, as a plus size person, I was like, is this trying to be like very preachy about it? Like, you don't need to remind me every single second of this. So that was something that I wish could have had some changes made to it. But other than that, I enjoyed it. The ending was really sweet, and I'm curious to see what else the author comes out with. I think there's supposed to be a companion novel to this one, and I'm curious to see what happens with that. So this was another 4 out of 5 stars. I did a retry of A Winter's Promise by Christelle Dabos. This was translated. Oh, I just noticed there's no translation credit on the front. This was originally written in Parisian French. Translated by Hilgard Searle. Sorry, I definitely didn't pronounce that right. I originally read this in physical copy only. The audiobook was not available when I got it. It was a total cover buy, and I still think this cover is beautiful, and they've released books 2 and 3 since. My friend suggested I read it via the audiobook this time because she really enjoyed it. So I gave it another go. I think originally I gave this book a 2 or 2.5 out of 5 stars. Rating. I will definitely say the audiobook helped the pacing an awful lot, but I think my criticisms of it originally are still there, that I don't feel like any of the relationship was developed between the two characters. I don't think either of the main 2 characters were developed, period, as individuals, let alone a relationship building up between them. I feel like it's just thrown in there and you're told that there's now a relationship and a bit of chemistry or something like that between them, and you're like, well, why? Like, he's just been a dick to her in a bunch of these scenes, and he's absent an awful lot, like, and he's just not telling her information and putting her in harm's way. What part of this is supposed to be desirable? So maybe that's totally just lost in translation, which is very hard very common, I think, when you're translating, even in using languages that have the same alphabet. It's very difficult to do that, so that could be a total reason. I don't see myself continuing on reading the series, but I hope someone does like these because they have beautiful covers, and I'd be curious if anyone has read the French versions, if you found that same issue with it. Like, the characters are just so, like, gone from my brain, like, not in there, because they're just these vague, they're not even like established characters in here, it's just these vague things. Some people told me book 1 is not the best and book 2 is where it picks up. If my library gets book 2, I may read it, depending on, you know, my mood, but nothing in this book specifically makes me want to continue on with the series, unfortunately. So this is like, what did I end up giving it? It's like a 3.5 out of 5 stars, 3.5. I read Raybear by Jordan Afueco. I loved this. This is another one that's gotten put on a lot of like best books of the year list, and it is very, very well deserved. I loved this. Everything about this, the characters, the plot, the conflict, the main character especially had she held my interest for the whole book, and everything that was happening. The magic was really cool. Just all of the politics and everything about this book was interesting. I think it kind of I don't know if broke the YA fantasy structure for me, but maybe, I don't know if I can necessarily say that, but I think the writing and the characters and the world and everything was so strongly constructed that I was able to jump in and get enthralled in the world and the conflict and get invested in the characters' well-being. So that's especially impressive for a debuter, because again, I think authors struggle for their first few books, trying to find what their voice is rather than fitting into what successful, already established authors do. I think we do that in all fields. So I think this was kind of a surprising, wonderful read, and I would definitely recommend the audiobook. I got given the coupon for it that came in the, I think it was Owl Crate. One of my friends got Owl Crate. She doesn't listen to audiobooks, but it came with a coupon to get the audiobook for this for free off of Libro, I think it was. So this was like, I for some reason I couldn't give it the full 5 stars, but it was definitely more than a 4 stars, so 4.5 out of 5 stars. I also picked up Harrow the Ninth by Tamsin Muir. This is the sequel to Gideon the Ninth. I definitely for some reason, forgot a good chunk of Gideon the Ninth, and then while I was going through this, I was like, wait, what? That doesn't... Wait, what? And so I definitely should have read them back to back, even though I think I read Gideon the Ninth like 2-3 months ago as a reread, and it's just like gone from my mind for some reason. I don't know why. So some of the stuff I was like, I can't remember why this is relevant, but cool. But I liked all of this. I just find this entire setting to be interesting, and the conflict of these like people, like, or not people, beings in space being these villains, and like I find this all really interesting. So I want to try and get sometime in this winter, in early 2021, sometime before April basically, do a back-to-back read, so I feel like I can reread Gideon the Ninth and then read this right away. So they'll connect the dots a bit more. But I enjoyed this. It's a 4 out of 5 stars. Then I picked up The Space Between Worlds by Micaiah Johnson. This wasn't everything I was hoping for. I honestly overhype the shit out of myself all the time when there's anything to do with time or space travel. That's totally my own fault. But this was definitely a really interesting read. This is another one that I would be very interested to read this in the summer time. And just all of the elements of like this futuristic world and the sci-fi big pharma corporation-y feels of it was very interesting. I think this is also one that when we're out of a pandemic, hopefully, or when I've had my vaccine, because bitch, I grew up like licking gobstoppers and I've had McDonald's. Like there's nothing in that vaccine that could like make me not take it at this point. I saw this trend on, where was it? Was it TikTok? People were like, am I gonna get the vaccine? Girl, I drank the original Four Loko. I'm immune already at this point. You best believe I'm taking that vaccine. So this was really interesting. I definitely want to give it a reread. I liked the ending of it, especially. I hope they don't like ruin it trying to do a spin-off or anything like this. But I feel like this was a really strong standalone, which is a rarity in really fantasy and sci-fi, but just in general in publishing. So I'm going to keep an eye on this author for sure. This was a solid 4 out of 5 stars. Then I picked up Battleborn by Amy Kaufman. This is the third and final book in the Elementals trilogy. It is so small compared to the other books. This is another one that I don't have my own physical copy. I have from the library, but I have it on my Christmas wish list, so hopefully I'm getting it for Christmas. It's so fun. It's a very quick read and it wraps up all the conflicts. Though when I do look at book 1 and 2 and then this, I think this could have been folded into book 2, or book 2 could have been cut down and put more into book 3. It just felt a little, I don't know, jarring is the right word? I don't know, it just felt something was like, this was a kind of forgotten twist-off novella thing that would be like thrown in at the end and not like a firm third book to wrap up a trilogy. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't bad. It just felt kind of weirdly short, and maybe like, or maybe something in here could have like been expanded to take a little bit longer. It just felt like very weirdly short for the whole trilogy. But I like the message of this book especially, but this whole trilogy has a wonderful message and this kind of coming together of the dragons and the wolves and everything like that. So in the end, it was a 4 out of 5 stars. Then I read Green Glass House. It was interesting. I liked that the main character, I don't know if I saw it in the summary. I don't know that I read the summary super detailed though, but the main character is adopted by parents who are of a different race of him, and there's this whole kind of inner monologue, inner monologuing and thoughts throughout that he loves his parents, that he has, and they live this wonderful cool life where they run a hotel that has patrons who are who do less than legal stuff for work. And all of a sudden everyone shows up all at once, and they clearly know each other, but everyone's pretending that they don't, and things go missing, and then a generator gets cut, and it's in the middle of a snowstorm. And so it's such a cool just concept. I think it's a bit like, it reminds me a bit of The Winter House, but the hotel doesn't take quite as front of a role, I guess, in the plot. It's still a very interesting setting, but it's like Winter House meets Clue, kind of a little bit. Yeah, I guess that's an easy way to explain it. It was really interesting. I'm definitely going to be reading the sequel. So this was like a 4.5 out of 5 stars. Then I picked up the Evercruel Kingdom. This is the sequel and wrap up to the Never Tilting World duology. It's fantastic. It's fantastic. It picks up right where book 1 left off. I think I want to read these back to back again in sometime in 2021. And we get this whole new element now that the worlds have collided the way they did at the end of book 1, that we're getting both of the sisters and both of the mothers / aunts stories, and it kind of trying to unpack the conflict that led to this, because it's been very one-sided for each of the sisters who have been living under the guardianship of who they've been living under. So that was really interesting. I liked the romances in this. Just everything about this series was fantastic. It is a breath of fresh air for me in the YA fantasy world, that I don't know that, again, it's necessarily original, but it is so well written, so well crafted. Everything is very clear. I can get emotionally invested in the characters. I think the world is really interesting, having the split climates, I guess. Is climates the right word there? Because I know there's a difference between weather and climate and all that. Either way, I love everything about this. Solid 5 stars, very solid duology. Then I read The Empire of Gold, which is the 3rd and final book in the Bad trilogy. It's fantastic. It makes absolutely no sense that this is S.A. Chakrabarty's debut series. None of that makes any sense. I had the paperback pre-ordered, and then for some reason Indigo just never got it in stock, and then they pushed the publication of that, and book 3 is available only in hardcover right now, and I have book 1 and 2 in paperback. So I will wait for the trade paperback of that to come out and put it on my shelf, and I want to reread that series constantly all the time. It's so amazing. I got so like entangled in the fantasy world that I forgot that the fantasy world is like, she was put there after the books. Like, the whole book series isn't set just in the fantasy world, that she goes into that fantasy world at the beginning by accident, and I like just forgot all about that for some reason. I liked that we kind of went back to the structure and format of book 1, in the sense that like we go into and out of the fantasy world and then the real world. I thought that was really interesting, and we bring in some historical aspects. Definitely enjoyed that. This was a really solid wrap up. I was very, very pleasantly surprised by this entire series. I think it had a really strong ending, and I cannot wait for whatever else this author has coming out. She has, I think it's in 2021 right now, at least as a tentative publication date, but I think it was Sinbad meets Ocean's 11 book series pitch, and I was like, you have my attention, and I will watch for that very eagerly. Solid 5 out of 5 stars. Silver Arrow by Lev Grossman. It was really cute, it was sweet, it was a fast read, enjoyed it. I think it's a good Christmas read and a good book to buy just for like kids for the Christmas holidays. So I enjoyed. Then I read The Burning God by R.F. Kuan, and this is the wrap-up to the Poppy War trilogy, another one that is incomprehensibly an adult fantasy debut series that is confusingly good. I also saw that someone is adapting this to be a TV series, and then like within 2 tweet replies, someone had made a collage of pictures of Scarlett Johansson vaguely dressed up how they would multiple of the characters in here, because Scarlett Johansson has this amazing history of being this privileged white woman and then constantly taking roles of Asian and people of color characters, and then defends it like, I'm an actor, I should be able to play anything, and then like doesn't acknowledge the issues with that. Please don't cast Scarlett Johansson in the adaptation, for the love of fucking God, don't do that. This was not an easy wrap-up, but I think that the author did what had to be done in the end. And by that I mean, like, not everyone lives happily ever after and, like, makes it to the end. They shouldn't. No part of books 1 or 2 should make you think that was going to happen, but I was nervous that she was gonna, like, cop out and just let everyone live happily ever after. That definitely does not happen, and there is so much backstabbing and lying, and the main character, this whole series has struggled with like what's being good, what's being bad, what's using your power, that feeling when you use your power, when do you cross over to the dark side kind of conflict. I loved this. I loved this so much. This is another incomprehensibly strong series, period, and this was a strong wrap-up. And I appreciated the ending, so solid 5 stars. Quick, The Inheritance Games. Absolutely love it. It gave me Truly Devious vibes. My bookstore didn't get any physical copies of it, so I have it on my Christmas list to get, and hopefully I do get it. I cannot wait for the sequel. just tons of Truly Devious-y vibes mixed with like a couple other things, but I got the same feeling from it as when I was reading Truly Devious, which is one of my favorite series. I read The Uncharted Sky by Curtis Craddock. I do not have a physical copy of it because despite the fact that it is very clearly a YA steampunk series, they market it as adult in Canada, and it's like $45 for the book. Are you on drugs, Tor? Like, are you out of your damn mind? Like, no, I'm not, no. I will wait for that chick to go up on Book Outlet or until I get a wonderful gift card and wait for a Plum Point sale or some shit. I'm not spending that much money on a book. I enjoyed the book, it was a wonderful wrap-up, and I liked that we slowly got romance slowly injected in this series, but it is not a main focus. It doesn't take away from any of the characters. I feel like actually it was amazing having the first book with essentially no romance, so you got to meet the characters, see their characteristics, and then it slowly comes in, and I like how everything ends with all of this cast. Solid 5 stars. I wish more people would read this series. I read the arc that I had of The Tigers in the Tower. I did not realize until after I got it. Julia Golding is a white woman. I've tried to get in the habit of judging based on the author's name because that can be so deceptive with like marrying and all that stuff. I don't like the concept of a white woman from England writing about the experience of an Indian child coming to England with all of the history of colonization between those two countries. Is very preachy, and despite the fact that it is so short, it is quite a drag of a book. I was quite surprised how long it took me to read it, so it wasn't exactly what I was hoping for, and just that element alone, I think there are books out there from Indian or Indian American authors who can talk about this experience, and I think you should read those books instead of this one. Then I read The First Sister by Lyndon A. Lewis. They have released the cover for the second book, The Second Rebel. I'm definitely going to be reading that. This was wonderful, weird, very quick, and definitely dark. Dark as heck. It is kind of what I expected for this in terms of like tone and everything. It was exactly what I was expecting. Definitely enjoyed it. Solid 5s. Then I went through the arc of Master of One by Jada Jones and Danielle Bennett. Honestly, this book was like quite hyped up for I don't know, a couple months when they released the cover and like there was arc signups and everything for it everywhere. I enjoyed it, but it wasn't anything different. I was just, the way it was being pitched or something, I was expecting something to be like iconic, either the cast or like maybe being like Six of Crows-esque or some of the conflicts or the romance or something. Nothing was wrong with this book, but it was just a YA fantasy. You know what I mean? That was unfortunate. So it's like a 3.5, 4 to 5 stars. And finally, I did a reread of Blutter by Amelia Wen Zhao, and I am awaiting The Red Tigress to come out, book 2, and I'm curious to see everything that's going to happen in that. I feel like this is a series that I'm really only going to appreciate once all of the books are out and I can read them all at once. So least most favorite books. Least favorite book this month, definitely A Winter's Promise. I've kind of explained why. Most surprising book would probably be The Inheritance Game. I was expecting to enjoy it, but not as much as I did, and I didn't think I was going to get attached to it or have any kind of, I don't want to say emotional attachment, because I don't think I have an emotional attachment to Truly Devious, but that is just such an amazing series to me, and I feel like I haven't read a book, a historically mystery. I think there's like A Madness So Discreet, which has kind of given me those vibes, and then a Truly Devious, that there's something about them that they stick in my head for forever and I constantly want to reread them, and The Inheritance Game kind of tapped into that. The Inheritance Games, sorry, and I'm definitely going to be reading the sequel, and well deserved on New York Times, and my friend, who was it? Was it Mackenzie? Is a big fan of the author. I've never read anything by the author before. She's been trying to get me to read some of her other stuff, so I'm definitely going to take a look. I think she has one that has like a series that has like chess pieces and like caution tape or something like that on the cover that I've seen before and I was curious about. Now I definitely want to read them. And favorite book this month? Honestly, I read a ton of really good books this month. A lot of series conclusions that didn't disappoint, which was surprising. But I think when I look at everything, Hollowpox and Ava Evergreen, but if I had to pick between the two, it would be Hollowpox, The Hunt for Morgan Crow. I was beyond hyped for this book and it didn't disappoint. It could have very easily disappointed me. It did not. And it is also where I can pull my favorite quote of the book from, or only quote that I wrote down this month that stuck with me. So in chapter 25, there's this line that says, "Small sparks make big fires," and that's just I don't know. There's something about that quote. It goes. I don't remember a ton of quotes, but there's that one. And there was this movie that I saw. I can't remember exactly what it was called. It had like, is it Emily Browning and Vanessa Hudgens in it, where they are in that psych ward and one of them gets a lobotomy and they go in their brain or something like that. It's a weird movie, and I don't know that I love or hate the movie, but there's this character in it who makes some comment like, if you don't stand for anything, or if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And it's been years since I've watched that movie, and I can still remember him in my brain, like what the screen looked like and him saying it. So I think this kind of goes in that. So yeah, that was my November. What did you read in November? Let me know. If you've read any of these books and what your thoughts were, I would love to know. I will link all of these books in the description box down below. Stay safe, wear a mask, Black Lives Matter, follow your local protocols or common sense if you have dumb local officials like I do, like my premier, who drew out all of this COVID shit until our entire province was collapsing, and then right at Christmas was putting a lockdown in thinking that people were going to listen to it. Like,